Okay, my name is Richard Todman, and since our chair is not here today, and I'm the senior member of the board, I will, guess I'll be chairing the meeting. This is any objections?
No objection.
So, welcome to the June 26, 2024 meeting of the West Bath Board of Assessment Review. The meeting will come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are offered. Please notify the chairman if you are unable to hear or see. The board works from a prepared agenda and will be considering today items, actually just one item, the appeal from the Truman Ledge LLC. Any person wishing to address the board may do so in accordance with the following procedures. After a presentation, the board will initially confirm with the applicants and the assessor the current assessed value of the property and the requested abatement amount. The board will then open the public hearing and ask the applicant to present their case, followed by questions by board members, and the assessor is not here, so I guess not the assessor. The board will then ask, again, we can't ask the assessor to present the case. This will be
Right, that's all we have, is the property card.
information, the property card. The board will then allow any member of the public to speak on the agenda item. The board will then close the public hearing and deliberate and make a decision on the tax abatement appeal. Following the decision on the appeal to the end of the meeting, the board will prepare a written decision, and that will be mailed to the applicants within 10 days of the board's vote. Evidence: the board may receive any oral or documentary evidence, such evidence shall be restricted to the subject matter of the agenda item. The board shall exclude irrelevant, immaterial, and unduly repetitive evidence. Citizens shall refrain from interrupting other speakers. This meeting is being taped, recorded, and it is very difficult to hear what is being said when multiple people at the same time. Citizens shall avoid personalities and conduct themselves in a civil, courteous manner expected of all meeting participants. Speakers should address questions through the chair. Speakers shall not attempt to engage in debate with other meeting participants. Person wishing to address the board on an agenda item shall signify the desire to speak by raising their hand when the chair announces that public comment will be considered on such items. After being recognized to speak by the chair, such persons will preface their comments by giving their first and last names and address. Any questions? Seeing none? Okay, then let us move on to the first agenda item, the tax abatement appeal of Truman Ledges, tax map U24, lot 24. The current assessed value is the land is $502,100, and the building is $168,000, for a total of $670,100. The abatement being requested is $343,000. So with that, I'll turn that over to you.
Hi, I'm Karen Winslow. I'm Karen True Winslow, so I'm part of the True family that owns Truman Ledge LLC. And the first thing that I wanted to bring up is the errors on the assessment card. We did have a meeting initially with Parker Appraisals and brought up many of the errors, but not all of them were fixed or changed, corrected, I guess I should say. This is a non-conforming buildable lot. The topography is steep, not rolling. There's an easement to access the property, and we have limited shorefront on the opposite side of the road, which is no access really from the road, because the road, as we have found and put in the packet, we signed a right of way over that land to the town, to the road. So when I go over those, the land part is steep and not rolling. The entrance to our property, our driveway actually goes over an easement of the neighboring property to get onto our property. It's a non-conforming lot, and then it's under the 2 acres, I think, is required in West Bath. So the Parker appraisals at the meeting brought up that the street was paved, and that actually had a benefit to us, but I don't know how a paved road has influence on the value according to state records that we've looked up. We have challenged pedestrian access to the water due to the steepness, and when the road was put in, well, as everywhere around the shorefront, there's erosion that's happened, and it's a really steep banking. So the only access to the water that we have is through the neighbor's property on both sides. And it's not a formal right-of-way, it's one of the neighbors is a relative, so it's sort of an informal access. We have limited water view due to the tree-lined roadway. The cottage sits elevated up on a hill on rock and is separated from the water by the Birch Point Road. The new information is that the town placed the easement on the entire waterfront property in 2006. My mother signed an agreement in August of 2006, and the easement was not attached to the original deed, but we put it in your packet. The Birch Point Road is a 3-rod road. The easement of the Birch Point Road no longer makes us what we feel waterfront property and greatly reduces the land value. So that's why we're asking for an abatement on the land value. The building, it's not a colonial, it's a subpar constructed cottage. It does not have central heat. It has a gravity forced air furnace, and that's barely ever used. It's a seasonal cottage. We shut it down in mid-September and reopen it in early June. So it's not open, not at all used in the winter. In fact, we can't get up the driveway in the winter. The kitchen is an old-style kitchen built in the 1950s. The bathroom, our old-style bathrooms, not typical, very little improvements. We've done a little improvements on, there's only one bathroom, by the way. We did a little improvement there cosmetically. The cottage construction is 2x4 walls, 2x6 floors, 24-inch. Single glazed windows. We were asked if those were the original windows, and they are. The only ones that aren't original are when we put an addition on the back years ago. The cottage is not insulated. We have open studded walls. It sits on wooden posts, not any type of foundation, and there's a dirt kind of crawl space under the front of it. Just because of the topography of the land, there's no crawl space under the back part of it. The overall condition of the cottage is fair, not good. And due to the value of the property and the cost of insurance, we only have liability insurance on the property. The assessment card indicates the assessment was estimated with no verification. The comparison sale that they used was September 30, 2021, was 35 West Circle, and it's for $601,000. And he asked me at the meeting how we are compared to that property. And that property is a year-round property. 3-bedroom waterfront, direct waterfront access, modern, full bath and kitchen, and sits on a block foundation, fully insulated, hot water baseboard, and was built in 1965. And they can walk right to the water with no obstruction. So I didn't think that was a fair comparison. Based on this comparison sale, that is in the time parameters of the revaluation, along with the information provided above. We are seeking an abatement of $250,000 on the land and $93,000 on the building, $93,000 on the building. And then I already said the cottage, they seek the errors on the card. Ours is a 1915 dated cottage. So the other question I had is, we were not ever consulted to have a site visit. So was there any reason that wasn't requested?
You mean us doing a site visit?
Anyone?
Assessors or anyone, yeah.
We don't typically do site visits, although we could if the board wanted to.
So the assessors would have had that person?
I got a quick question.
One would expect an assessor would have.
We submitted 7 copies of a full packet. Do you have those copies of all information?
Yeah.
Yes,
That would be this.
prior to,
So you have a copy of this here?
yes.
Okay. I'm just checking.
No,
I'm just gonna jump in here, just to put the record together. The tax card that you've passed out today, was that part of the application? I mean,
no, I
is
just
there any objection to
provided,
having the tax card be admitted into the record okay, I figured not, I just wanted to make sure. I think it'd be helpful to have that in the record, even though it wasn't part of the application, and
yeah.
the assessor's not here to offer it in, but I think everyone can agree to put that in as a document.
Steve, do you have a question for me or for the board?
Just a point of information.
Okay, because we're not taking public comment.
Sure, I'll take a copy.
As a point of information for the board.
Yeah, well,
Maybe we should.
The assessors did not, and were not required to make an appointment for viewing of the property.
oh, okay.
No one,
So they may have showed up if no one was there.
yes,
Yeah.
I mean, they would look at the property anyways. According to the requirements of the contract, they were supposed to ask if they could view the interior, and if there was no one there, they were supposed to come back 3 times, but that was not done by them either.
Is that the visit that you're talking about, or is it the visit of this body to?
No, we were never contacted to have a visit ever, so.
I just
I was just curious.
want to say this is my first ever meeting that I'm attending, so I'm new to this, familiar with kind of general stuff, but so I'm not sure what the process is. When asking for a visitation, and when I looked at the information, I wondered if this body was the body that would go visit.
Typically, we do not. If the board wanted to, we have the right to do that.
Okay. And if it's requested by a person that wants it, I'm assuming you requested a visit?
I was more
the
curious.
assessing agent, the people that did the revaluation.
So,
Well, either, I was just more curious on how this, if somebody does an appeal, how the decision to, go yes on appeal or no is done without more work, like a site visit. That's really where I was coming from.
So what I'm taking from this conversation is that if you requested that, then we would take that into consideration for further information.
I'll just weigh in. So it's the board's prerogative to decide whether or not it's requested by either of the parties. It's the board's prerogative to decide whether a site visit would be useful to the board in its decision-making process. If you do decide to do a site visit, that has to be properly noticed as a public meeting. So we would have to continue this hearing to a different date and schedule a site visit as part of this process, and then come back for the rest of it, just so you know what the process would be, because that is entitled to be its own public proceeding, the site visit.
So the public could come on that visit too?
Yes, it would be properly noticed and as to where it was happening, and it would be, but it would have to be separately noticed, because all that's been noticed for today is the hearing here on the abatement application. And as you pointed out, it's not something that happens as a matter of course. The last abatement application you had, you did not visit the site, which is fine. I think it's, in my experience, not typical for the board. It's typical for the assessor to visit the property, but I don't think it's typical for the board and assessor review too, at least in my experience. But certainly something you could do if you wanted to.
I think I've been on the board since it was created, and we have never, no, we made one.
We went every time. I chatted for all those years, and we never missed a site visit. Always advertised, and we always went.
Yeah, I kind of figured that there'd be a representative from the appraisal, company, Parker Appraisal, and, quite honestly, this is what, our fourth time here now, from the revaluation, and,
Only once have they been here.
that was the first time, that was back in September of last year.
I have a question for the gentleman in the back corner. Is it okay? Address? Just to what he said earlier. So as far as the site, is that a general, because I'm unfamiliar with how the assessors handled it in the contract, is that a general that if the property owner was present to ask to come in?
That was what was specified in the contract, and the assessors were supposed to visit every property, and if they met someone there, they could ask to go in.
They could ask, but they didn't have to. I'm just trying to get some clarity.
It said in the contract it was supposed to.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No.
No,
This is a member of the public giving their opinion, just to be clear, this is
Okay.
not an elected official or town representative. So, I mean, you're free to ask, I just wanted to make that point, because you are both new.
Well, and I also just want to, just on the question of the visit part of it, the question before the board today is going to be whether the assessment was manifestly wrong, whether the taxpayers met their burden to show that the assessment was manifestly wrong, and if so, what level of abatement is appropriate in your view. As to whether, it may be relevant whether the property was visited or not, but that in and of itself would not result in abatement. The fact that they didn't complete what they were supposed to do under the contract, that kind of thing. What you're looking at is evidence, one way or the other, or whether the property was overassessed in this instance, and whether the taxpayer meets the burden. Because you're new, I'll just go through just the quick and dirty. The assessment is presumed to be valid. The taxpayer has the right to challenge that and to overcome that presumption of validity. And in order to do so, the taxpayer needs to show that the assessment was manifestly wrong, meaning either that there was substantial overvaluation, there was unjust discrimination, or that the assessment was somehow illegal or void or fraudulent. So those are the three ways that you can show that it was manifestly wrong. It sounds like, based on what I've seen in this instance, that they're looking at the substantial overvaluation. They believe that their property was overvalued by the assessor or during the evaluation process. So I just kind of want to refocus it on, that's really what the question before you is, and I think you want to go through your process as you usually do, make sure you've got jurisdiction, make sure you've got the assessed values properly, that reflect the card and that kind of thing, and then go into the evidence on value to see how you come down one way or the other on that. So, and I'm here to answer questions as you go, and also to assist you with the written decision once you reach one.
Okay, so I'd like to raise a question.
Yeah, sure.
So about the process, so I also went through this process myself this year, and my understanding was that when I submitted my documents, they went back to the assessing firm, Parker, for them to evaluate the information that I gave them, and then they came back with that. Is that a visit that we're talking about? The visit that we're talking about is just about this body going to check out things, but I guess my short question is, did Parker address these questions, or are they part of the process where they address the questions you're raising now and come back with their assessment of what it should be? I think that's what I understood my process was going to be, that I would submit the documentation like you put before us, but that it would go back to Parker, they would reevaluate, and they'd make a recommendation back to the town about an abatement or not.
Did you say you actually met with Parker? You went over?
The initial letter, we set up a meeting with Parker and brought up the errors on the card.
You said they made some changes, but not all the changes?
Right.
But said they reviewed it. and
They
made
said
some
they
changes.
reviewed it, and here's the
Okay.
amended part, you
But
know.
also at that time, we were not aware of the town of West Bath having the full easement across the entire property
Gotcha.
on the waterfront side. And just to make it clear, we've been to several, assessment appeal board meetings. And I'm not familiar how you run one here, but normally there's an assessor who is representing the town, the appellant, which would be us. We present our case. The assessor would present their case for the town, on the town's behalf. Then there's a rebuttal period between for both of them in order for you to make a decision. Is that the procedure, if I'm getting it correct?
And that's how it's supposed to work.
Okay,
But Parker's not here
okay, I'm
to
just,
present
all right.
their justification for
Just so I have
filing
it clear.
arrived at these figures.
So then we don't have any more information that Parker would have generated from those questions in front of us.
Right.
We just have the original and then your request.
Well, there's some amendments that, like you said, the easement wasn't there when we originally went to the meeting.
That didn't go through Parker
No.
either at all.
No.
That's just Brandon. So it seems like the process is incomplete to me if Parker has not gone back to, as I understood the process, it would go back to them for reassessment, and they bring some information back to the town on a recommendation.
I think the town has been having issues with Parker, and Parker has not been willing to come forward and do what they're supposed to do, which we have no authority over that.
Right, and in terms of the process, I think this might be a good opportunity to go through the procedural steps so that so that we're clear that the board has jurisdiction over this appeal. So, and I think there was information in the application on that, so if the board wants to go through that in terms of when the abatement was requested, when the decision was made, that kind of thing, I think that would be appropriate at this time for the board to make a finding at least that has jurisdiction over this appeal, because there are some timeframes that I can explain if we need to, that need to be met in order to have the board have jurisdiction, so. So I think starting with the date of the abatement request. And I'm happy to run through it if you want me to, it just,
That would be
typically,
helpful.
okay. So it looks like according to the application, and my copy of the application is a little bit cut off, so it has a received date on the. You don't have it either, so I'm talking at the top, there's a received date at the top, but
Yes, and the abatement,
It was filed 12/20.
12/22/23,
Yeah.
is that right? Okay. So, I'm just making notes on the written decision as we go. So if the abatement request was 12/22/23, and then it looks like, the date of the elected assessor's decision, does that say 3/19/24?
Yes.
Okay. And that has to be within 60 days after the abatement has been requested or it's deemed to be denied. And I think,
and the town administrator did reach out to the applicant for extensions.
okay,
And
so I just wanted to say that 60 days would have
It's not-
passed before.
so they agreed to
Yeah.
2 extensions, and then after no decision was made, then
Okay,
they asked
okay,
for
so
the appeal.
do you, any idea what the timing of those extension requests was, or?
So April 17th was the second,
That's the meeting I attended when nothing could be done because they weren't there.
right,
So that wasn't an extension I asked for. I
Well-
didn't choose.
Now, the town has been asking for the extensions.
so,
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess my question is that if the abatement request was made on December 22nd, 2023, was there an extension request granted between that day and 60 days from that day?
Well, the original one was made to the West Bath Select Board.
Right, the assessors, yeah,
That was the original one.
right, so that's December 22nd, 2023.
Yes.
So within 60 days of that, so if there was no action within 60 days, it was deemed to be denied on the 60th day. If there was, in the meantime, in that intervening period, a request for an extension, that's my question. It wouldn't.
The town administrator initiated the extension, she reached out, but I don't have the dates to, let me go ask her.
Yeah, we kind of need those dates because, so the 60 days after 12/22/23 is February 20th of 2024. So that would have been the decision date of the assessors for their deemed denial if there was no extension before then. So it would be helpful to know what the extension date was before then to make sure that this board has jurisdiction, so.
I remember you saying,
That's first out of Proctor, and you are
Richard Totten.
Richard Totten.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
One last time.
Just as a point of information for you, at one of the recent selectmen's meetings when this came out, as the members of the public, I made a strong recommendation that those dates be forwarded to Mark to verify whether you had, before you leave, whether you had that. And I'm taking it that wasn't done.
I guess not.
Thank you. As a member of the public, thank you for that information.
May I ask, so you were on this board?
I chaired it from 2005 through 2017 or so.
Wow.
So after the
Yeah.
prior revamp. So it was my
That's a
pleasure
receive the
to
official
deal with many
Sixty
things.
days.
Okay, great. What's your name?
I'm Juanita, it's legally, it's Wilson, how to say, I'm Juanita Wilson.
Thanks.
For all practical
Thanks.
purposes.
Thanks
And
for your.
she is a main state license that says you can give us some proper terms.
I'm a federally certified appraiser, state certified assessor, and still a designated member. So I've been dragged around the barn 2 or 3 times.
Okay,
And your board is so fortunate to have
So
Mark
they just kept
as
extending.
your guidepost. You're really very fortunate.
yeah.
But they've been trying to get Parker Appraisal to respond to it, and they
So you
haven't.
represent the town?
Representative board, but, yeah, representative board in this particular proceeding. We our firm does work with the town as well. But for this proceeding, I'm the board's attorney, not representing the assessor or anything like that, so I'm just representing the board in this appeal process. So part of my, role in advising the board is making sure that you have jurisdiction, proper jurisdiction to hear the appeal. That's why, I just wanted to check and clarify whether there were, because what happens, just so I can explain it while Carlos gone, if no action is taken within 60 days of the abatement request, it's deemed to be denied automatically. And the reason for that is that you don't want to have taxpayer waiting around forever for a decision on an abatement request. So after 60 days by statute, it's deemed to be denied. They then have 60 days from that date to bring an appeal to this board. Unless there's an agreement in writing to extend either of those time periods, the initial time period, the initial 60 days for the abatement response, or the subsequent 60 days for the appeal process. So if there was some written request and an agreement to an extension, then that would be one thing, but it looks like, I guess the question I need clarification on from the clerk is whether prior to February 20th, 2024, there was an extension agreed to in writing to extend that period, because otherwise that would have been the date that the appeal was denied.
So the abatement, application for abatement was filed on December 22nd. On February 8th, the town administrator asked the applicant if they would agree to an extension, which they did, and then April 17th was the meeting that was with Parker Appraisal. We're supposed to be with Parker Appraisal April 17th. And at that meeting, they agreed to a second extension.
Okay, so the first extension was for how long was it?
60 days.
60 days.
And I don't think there was a time limit on the second extension.
Okay.
I believe the town had something like 50 odd requests for abatements. And so they were, the selectmen were feeling like they were not able to respond to those. So they were kept getting extensions and having hearings.
Okay, so the next date on the application is the date of the elected assessor's decision was, it says 3/19/24. So was there an actual denial of the abatement request on 3/19/24? Is that accurate?
That was, there was a letter sent out to the applicants. It's kind of confusing. So, December 8th, the board. Sorry, my date's confused. After the original extension, the Board of Assessors asked that the town administrator send out written notice to all of the applicants. So there is a denial, but the board never accepted or denied the denial recommendation by Parker Appraisal. There was a recommendation to deny the abatement, but the Board of Assessors tabled making a decision on that to confirm whether or not the applicants wanted to appeal. Does that make sense?
Not really, but, so I'm just.
So the letter went out March.
I guess, was there, but that letter was not an actual denial of the abatement request?
No, that was
The
a letter
recommendation.
of the recommendation of the assessing agent.
Okay, so did the Board of Assessors never make a decision?
They never
first?
acted on
Okay.
the recommendation.
So the extension, they extended the period to April 8th, 2024, right? So it was a 60-day extension from February 8th, 2024. Well, I guess that's what, you have that writing? Because I don't know whether that means that it was extended from its original deadline, which was February
I
20th.
don't have that in writing.
Or was the request made in writing? Or do you just not have it?
Should we email you
It
or?
would have been
But
an email,
via email.
but I don't have my email with me.
So let's see if she has.
If she has that,
She
because
should have
the
that.
statute requires the extension request to be agreed to in writing.
Yeah.
For this very reason, so that we know actually when, what was agreed to. So if that's possible to have, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question. Doesn't this board have the authority to waive that?
No. There's no ability to waive it's a jurisdictional deadline.
Oh, I've seen it done before.
It's not been done properly. There is an ability to extend that by statute in writing an agreement between the taxpayer and the assessor, or the taxpayer and the board, but there's not an ability for the board to waive and create its own jurisdiction. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Because as far as timestamping anything goes, unless it's a registered letter, I mean, there's been a lot of phone conversations, a lot of emails.
Well, email is fine for writing. I mean, an agreement in writing can be done by email. That's
Right,
not a
there's also
problem.
been phone conversations.
That's not in writing.
There's been site visits here for meetings.
Yeah,
The Parker's never,
no, I understand that. And
never available, and, this has been a toss away from day one.
all I can tell you is sort of what the statute provides. So, what the statute says is if, for the board part of it. If the Board of Assessment Review fails to give written notice of its decision within 60 days of the date that the application is filed, unless the applicant agrees to, in writing, to further delay, the application is deemed denied, and the applicant may further appeal to court if they want to.
And it's also my understanding that no one on the select board is a certified assessor.
I don't know the answer to that question.
They're elected
Yes,
assessors.
but none of them are certified assessors.
Correct.
Not that I know of, but they're not.
So then, and just to close the loop on that, so for the notice of a decision on an abatement, what it says, the statute says, is if the assessors or municipal officers fail to give their notice of their decision within 60 days from the date of filing of the application is deemed to have been denied, and the applicant may appeal as provided in subsequent section, the one I just quoted from. So that's,
Yes,
it's
but that's
triggered
after,
from the
but
filing date.
that's after you've had a hearing. This is the first hearing we've actually had.
No, yeah, but I'm saying, if nothing, essentially, if the application's filed and then nothing occurs for 60 days, the application, it says it's deemed to have been denied unless the applicant has in writing consented to further delay. So that's where the writing.
Yes, but we have a right to a hearing. And
If
we
you
have-
follow the process, you do, yes.
Yes, but we haven't had that hearing. This is the first time we've had the hearing.
I understand that, but we're just trying to sort out, at this point,
I understand
whether
you're trying to
whether the board
make a
has
timeline.
jurisdiction.
But what I'm saying is, we have the right to a hearing on abatement appeal.
You certainly,
And we-
Which we thought was happening April 17th.
Which we thought was going to be April 17th, which didn't happen. Okay, so I'm not sure how you can,
well, this application was filed on June 2nd, though.
They told us we had to refile an application.
refile for
And we
this
couldn't
one.
use the original application for the meeting of April 17th, we had to do a new one.
Okay. I'm sort of really confused now.
Clear as mud, isn't it?
Join the club.
Is the fact that we have a meeting set up right now evidence that the process got us to this point, jurisdictionally?
No, not necessarily, because, and that's why I always recommend that the board at the outset determine the timeframes. I mean, the scheduling of this meeting is just a sort of a administrative matter that was done by the town based on the fact that an application was filed and that kind of thing. As to whether the timeframes have been followed properly to give this board proper jurisdiction, that's something that, sort of needs to be fleshed out a little bit and memorialized so that we're clear that the board does it. The decision on jurisdiction is this board's decision, based on whether there's evidence that they follow the process. So it's not for the clerk to decide or the town administrator to decide if this board has jurisdiction. Simply scheduling the meeting doesn't confer jurisdiction on the board. It's just it's essentially a scheduling matter.
So it doesn't necessarily satisfy the legal need to schedule this meeting now. I mean, did somebody with the process have generated this meeting based on the I's and T's being crossed already and gotten to this point?
I mean,
I know it may need more
that's the thing, not
information.
necessarily, because I mean, it really comes down to the question of, was an extension requested, granted, that kind of thing. Just because I'm just looking at if the abatement was requested on 12/22/23, then it would have expired on 2/20/24 unless an extension was requested. It sounds like there was an extension, but waiting to see sort of what that provided and what it was. It sounds like it was done by email, and if there's an email, that's fine. But if it was verbal would not be okay, but the question is, did it extend it 60 days from that date, or did it extend it 60 days from the original expiration date, which was February 20th? That's what I'm trying to determine.
She
So
wrote to me.
Let me ask the applicant, did you actually receive an email asking you to agree to a 60 days extension?
Yeah, but my sister got all the emails and forwarded.
And then did you reply that you agreed to it?
I don't know, honestly.
You know,
I know we got the notice, and I don't know if we answered it. I don't think it was I don't recall getting an email that asked us to respond, but I can look.
Well, the Board of Assessment Review held a meeting on May 16th for State Road LLC. This is from the town clerk. And they made the decision not to wait for the Board of Assessors to make a decision to appeal to the Board of Assessment Review after the initial 60 days from filing the abatement request. So
That was when I asked her why,
this one property was.
we were here on April 17th and why it wasn't immediately going to the next step. And she said we had to do a new form, a new request.
Yeah.
And I said, why is this property being heard on May 16th? And that was her answer.
And they had gone over 60 days.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was, if it's about an extension.
I guess I can go get my computer if I need to, in the car.
Do you have it in the car?
Yeah,
You have a pause in the action.
okay.
You may just want to take a brief recess, would be appropriate.
Okay, yeah,
Well, while the clerk is trying to get something and they're trying to get something, let's
yeah.
just take a brief recess.
Agree to recess?
I
Okay,
agree. Yeah.
we'll recess.
Does anybody have an extra pen, pencil?
I have some.
Well, that's too nice. Can I ask you what some of the dates were that we know?
Yeah, well, let's just wait to leave that on the record, yeah, so, just to make it official, but, yeah. Recess,
Yeah. Saying, well, what did you do for the date? Yes, and you need to get that information. I did that. That is convenient, but he needs some information. The fact that they didn't get the information to him.
Another ball from.
And why we sit hours and hours and hours trying to be civil. Seriously.
Parker not doing implementation.
So, we'll just want the advice to let the attorney know. And hopefully ask the question.
That'd be bad, but possible. All the mess goes back to Parker not.
What are these dates here?
It's.
Then this is more than 60 days after that. So,
So the short answer is we don't have an email from February. In March 19th, the town sent out a letter.
No, okay, let's come out of, so they took a brief recess, so that, yeah, because, and, let's wait till, the other taxpayer back in,
Right.
she was trying to
She's
find
getting the
a
laptop,
laptop.
which is perfect, yeah, so.
Okay, we can resume the hearing now.
We might want to give her time to try and see if she can find an email.
Do you need more time?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, we'll continue the recess.
Okay.
is it okay for me to make notes on this?
You think Ada Y is getting phone calls and Kevin,
I
presuming she's in?
took her to local convention on one of the five years. Yes. 50th
So what month are we looking at?
You said February 9th? Christine said February 9th as well, so we're looking into February.
Yeah.
It was in the
So many
package.
stories. So many. Yeah. Remember when I bought my place from her, this is back in '75. I said, well, I'm going to checked on that, and he looks me up and says, no, you're supposed to put a down payment down. I said, yeah, I've heard that. And I said, well, how much you want? And he eyed me some more and said, how about $300? I bit my cheek, biting it real hard now. Well, I guess that'd be all right.
Yeah, that's acceptable, I'll scrape. The scary thing is how much cash she kept in the old roll top desk
I would be surprised.
in her office, in her home. Oh my Lord, it's just amazing.
Hundreds of thousands?
That might be great, but it was enough that a
about just some details today.
alone.
Yeah, his question?
I don't think we should talk about the application during the
Right, yeah, wait till we get back from recess, let's talk about the application, about anything else? The weather, or?
So it's not about the application, but about the timeframes that are required in the application? So like the
Same idea, but I'm happy to run through just sort of what the statutory thing after we get out of recess, if that was, that would be my recommendation.
trying to count some days and figure out
Yeah,
what you're figuring out too, probably.
yeah, exactly, that's okay.
Okay.
I'd have the last 8 done. I'd have the last 8 done.
No, I don't see anything. I see an email in March about the agenda for the, abatement review schedule item on the agenda. And I just texted her, but I haven't got an answer. But I sent an email after the April meeting, very confused about what happens after the April 17 meeting, that nothing could be done because the assessor wasn't here. And I got a very confusing response back, which basically said, what I said is, you referenced the procedure to appeal apply to the Board of Assessment Review, yet we have not yet had our first abatement hearing regarding our original appeal. This was the email notification about the meeting. Parker Appraisal reviewed your application for abatement and made the attached recommendation to the Board of Assessors. A representative from Parker Appraisals will attend the Board of Assessors meeting on April 17th, beginning at 9 a.m. to discuss their recommendation in more detail. When I went to the meeting on April 17th, it was stated that the Select Board was in a predicament because Parker Appraisals was not present and they did not have the information or the formal background to conduct the property abatement hearing. It was also mentioned then that if I did not accept the first denial, it would start the appeal process to the Board of Assessment Review. However, they were in the same boat, lacking the proper information. So I did not accept the denial of our appeal, so it was tabled until further information was available. I was told that I would then receive a certified letter in regard to the next step, the next meeting. The letter that I received was not certified. It is asking us to state our position, which I thought we had already done in person. The town had posted that the BAR will be conducting a hearing for single property, and that was the next property that I didn't understand. So we got a letter, but it was not certified, and it was asking us to restate our position on the appraisal. And that's why we did this new application.
So we'll just pretend we're out of recess for that, so that that can be part of the record, that recitation of that email. So if it's helpful, I think maybe I just want to just encapsulate what I'm understanding to be the timeline here. Taxpayer filed an initial abatement request to the Board of Assessors on December 22nd, 2023. Is that right?
Correct.
The abatement, so 60 days after December 22nd, 2023 is February 20th, 2024. On that date, the application for abatement was deemed to be denied. Because there was, my understanding is that there was no extension granted for that initial abatement, 60-day abatement period. Am I understanding that correct? That there was not a written request of the taxpayer to extend that period, or written consent. So again, what the statute says is that if the assessors or municipal officers before whom an application in writing for the abatement of a tax is pending fail to give written notice of their decision within 60 days from the date of the filing of the application is deemed to have been denied unless the applicant has in writing consented to further delay. And that's why I was wondering whether there was any writing, whether email, letter, otherwise, that consented to a further delay. Otherwise, the decision date for purposes of your review was February 20th, 2024. In which case, they had 60 days from that date to file an appeal with this board. And that's my question.
I'm adding that my sister does have a letter on, an email on February 29 that said updates would be sent out about the review schedule. It doesn't say anything about an extension.
So I think, unless I'm missing something, the initial application, which we've agreed was December 22nd, 2023, was deemed to have been denied on February 20th, 2024, which means an application for an appeal would have been made by April 20th, 2024, and the application that's before you is dated June 2nd, 2024. And so based on those facts, I don't believe that the board has jurisdiction over the appeal.
When it's appropriate for me to speak, I would like to make a comment.
For those, just for the record, this is Christine, our town administrator, Christine Boland.
Okay. I believe there was agreement to an extension. In the few minutes that Carly was up in my office, I couldn't locate it. But I did reach out to everybody on the list and asked if the timeline could be extended. I would appreciate more time to see if that was actually done as I have listed on my spreadsheet, because I wouldn't want Truman Ledge to miss an opportunity to appeal. I need a little bit more time. There was a lot of paperwork going around at that time, and I want to make sure that I'm looking in the right spot to locate it.
So it's up to the board to decide if you want to sort of table this and allow the administrator to.
And you're saying we have no jurisdiction?
Right. I think as it stands, unless there's more evidence to suggest otherwise, there's nothing in writing that extended that initial 60-day period that resulted in a deemed denial on February 20th. If that is the case, then there's no need for the board to go forward on the appeal because you don't have jurisdiction over it. If you want to table it to see if the town administrator is able to find something that, in writing, or the taxpayer can find something in writing that extended that period, such that, the appeal that was filed on June 2nd was not untimely, then you can certainly, table this. Your own deadline, is 60 days from when the application was filed, which is August 1st, 2024. So you have some time before, within your 60-day period, if you want to table this to allow the parties to, look and see.
So it sounds like a motion to table would be in order, and then we can discuss it and vote on it.
This is to allow other evidence to perhaps come forward.
Well, we have options here. We can just simply say we have no jurisdiction to hear this based on the evidence we have at this point. Or we can table it to allow the town administrator time to find documentation that there was a written agreement to extend it.
Okay.
So that's our options. So we need a motion to table it, or
I'll make a motion to table.
second that? Okay. Now, is there any discussion on that?
Is there a time frame for?
We have about 60 days if we extend that.
Till August.
You have till August 1st for your 60-day period from when, which starts when the application was filed. So you do have some time there, and there's also the opportunity to request an extension of that time if the taxpayer agrees in writing again, like for the other one. So there is some time. You know, it was just filed on June 2nd, so there is some time there.
Now, I guess I have a question. If we went with that we don't have any jurisdiction to hear this, what option does that leave then?
The next step in the appeal would be to appeal to court
Go to court?
and show that you were wrong to dismiss it based on lack of jurisdiction. So that they would have to come forward with some reason why that decision was wrong, that you lacked jurisdiction.
Do you have a preference for what you want?
Well, I think I am totally dismayed by the system because I relied on the guidance of the staff here to show us the process. And even though we've done it in other towns, we know a little bit more than the average Joe. This appraiser's behavior has led you all to these problems, and we're all suffering from it, and that's not fair. That's not right. And we shouldn't have to go to court.
And I was very much aware of the time limitations, and this is why we kept, we were being told, we're gonna extend it, we're gonna extend it, we're gonna extend it. And that was right from the get-go, okay? Because I'm very cognizant of the time constraints, the 60 days, you know, I've been through it before, so I know the process. In other towns that we have property in, everything's always done by registered mail, so there's a timestamp. And unless you get a receipt or an email, that technically, you really can't go with that. Unless you, because you don't know if the applicant received that email or not. You know when it gets sent. But unless there's a receipt for that, you actually do not know the time of that. That really isn't, you know, timestamped document. And it shouldn't be considered as one either.
Well, I'll point out, the statute does not specify what type of a writing it has to be, what the agreement, or the consent to the delay that the taxpayer needs to make, just has to be in writing. It doesn't specify the type of writing, it doesn't say it has to be mailed, it has to be in a letter, it has to be an email. It just has to be in writing, so it can't just be a verbal agreement, obviously, for obvious reasons, so that there's some evidence to show the board and to show a court, if it's reviewing it, that the board actually did have jurisdiction over the appeal. So that's the reason behind it. It is what it is. There's nothing that the board can do to waive that or to change that. And the way that the statute is set up, like I said before, that deemed denial thing is, ironically, I think it was established to try to protect taxpayers from like having abatement requests that are languishing for a long period of time. It basically sets it, after 60 days, it's an automatic denial, and then they can take the next step so that you're not waiting around forever for a decision. Doesn't always work out to the taxpayer's benefit because you have to be aware, you know, of that time frame, that process. But again, the board's jurisdiction is only that what the statute gives it, and so that's why it's appropriate. And it sounds like it's been, I guess there's still technically in discussion on that motion, but there's been a motion and second to table this to see if there is any documentation to suggest an extension that was agreed
Okay,
to.
I've got one other question. I believe the April 17th meeting was taped. Recorded?
Yes.
Does the select board have the authority for extension? And if they said an extension in that meeting, does that qualify?
Again, so the deemed denial date was February 20th, 2024. Any extension would have had to occur before that February 20th date. You know what I'm saying? So to extend that period of time.
Well, there was a second extension after that, but you're looking for the first extension. Because
Well-
you said there was a second.
Right, there
extension.
is a second extension in there, but that doesn't.
March.
Because every meeting we met with the select board,
But so I guess the assessors or select board, what do you wanna call it, essentially their purview over this matter ended on February 20th of 2024, when it was deemed to be denied by them. So then it becomes sort of the purview of the board, and if there was an extension request to the board to extend that 60-day period for the appeal, then that's what would have needed to happen. The Board of Assessors cannot agree to an appeal that this board is hearing.
correct.
You know what I'm saying? So anything that happens post February 20th of 2024 has to be this board agreeing to an extension, not the Board of Assessors.
Let me ask you this question, so if there's no action by the select board on the initial, after 60 days, it's automatically denied?
Automatically denied by statute. So that's what I was saying about. The statute calls it deemed denied, so it was deemed denied on February 20th because no action was taken by the Board of Assessors within that 60-day period. And
Even though we didn't have a hearing?
right. There doesn't need to be. There can, and it happens all the time. The assessors receive abatement requests, they don't act on it whatsoever. It's deemed to be denied 60 days later. The taxpayer can then take the next step, and again, it's sort of to protect that taxpayer from not having an abatement request pending for 6 months or a year. It's 60 days. It's deemed to be denied. You can take the next step and appeal it. But no action needs to be taken within that 60 days, and if nothing happens, then on that 60th day, it's deemed to be denied. So that's just the way that the statutes work.
So it doesn't matter that there was a March extension, it was too late.
It was too late. I mean, if the extension was from the Board of Assessors, you know, like I say, this case was essentially out of their hands on February 20th, and somewhat in the hands of this board. I mean, but until an actual appeal application is made to this board, it's really not in the hands of this board. So I guess, just say hypothetically, it was deemed denied on February 20th. If an appeal application was then filed, say on March 1st, then this board would be within their purview, you know, so that, say March 1st application, and then they would have 60 days from March 1st to reach a decision, or extend that period of time if they need more time for the appeal. But at that point, the Board of Assessors, you know, sort of jurisdiction or, you know, authority in that case, it ended. It was already gone on February 20th when their deemed denial, essentially, that was their decision. Even though it was a non-decision, that was their decision. So.
At what point in time can you file and stop a new clock?
So the clock for the appeal would have started on.
A new appeal, because your tax year.
Right, so an abatement request needs to be filed within 185 days of the commitment date. So taxes were committed when?
April something usually.
In September.
Or
September. Do you know what? I'm just curious what the 185 was, but I think we're past that.
Well, February 29th was the deadline for
Okay.
filing.
So the deadline for filing abatement requests for the April 1st, 2023 assessment date, which is what this was an abatement request for, was February 29th. So the next tax year is a brand new tax year, brand new opportunity to seek an abatement. So the April 1st, 2024 assessment, well, that will be committed sometime in September to taxes, right? The taxes will be committed sometime in September. That will then generate another 180-day clock to request an abatement for the 2024 taxes. So each tax year is new. You can ask for an abatement every single year.
That's what
you want to.
I wanted to know what that date
Yeah.
was.
So I think that date won't get triggered until the taxes are committed for that year, and that's 185 days from that. So I think we saw a motion pending on
Yeah,
that.
we have a motion pending. Are we ready to vote?
Table.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to table? Okay, so we will
So it's
table.
tabled indefinitely, it's not to a date certain.
How much time do you need to?
I just probably by Friday, I would be able to determine whether or not there's documentation.
So
I just
the
want to
question-
make sure that I'm looking at everything.
Well, we would also need time to review our emails for the same information.
Yeah.
So I would think 2 weeks.
Do you-
Because we're dealing with, 3 different people here.
Because I do have a February 8th date on my spreadsheet that says that we talked about an extension, or, there was some correspondence about an extension. I just need to locate
Do you want to look at the week of the 8th
documentation.
for a follow-up meeting? Week of July
You
8th.
guys have your calendars to look at a date, a week after 4th of July. You don't have your calendar, and you can't.
I know.
Would that involve us?
Would that involve us or
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out, do we want to, you said 2
Oh,
weeks kind
deadline.
of, no, 2 weeks, to set the next meeting for this, the follow-up meeting for the board to come back and consider whether there's any additional in it. So, 2 weeks from now would be the week of the 8th.
That's for the purpose of convening another meeting.
Of the board, yeah.
Of the board, but is
And
it,
you having 2 weeks to,
And involving you too, yeah, I mean, so I guess the point is that the board needs to come back, everything has to happen in a meeting itself, it can't sort of happen outside of a meeting, so if there is evidence that's found on the extension, that would need to be brought before the board to show the board that they have jurisdiction, and so I think there was some discussion that maybe 2 weeks was an appropriate amount of time, if that works for people, it's sometimes easier to have it tabled to a date certain so that everyone knows. If not, then we can just follow up with scheduling later if you don't have your calendars in front of you, that kind of thing, so.
so without a calendar, you might not have a calendar either.
No, I
So
don't.
is it possible for us to pick a date and see if it works?
Yeah,
Are there more commissioners as well to get quorum, or is it just the 3 of us?
I think it's limited to the 3 of us at this point.
Because you're the ones hearing the case,
It's-
could
we gotta
bring
continue this
additional.
down. Yeah, right, makes sense. I'm available on the 8th, say, but you don't know whether you're on or not.
that week's good.
That's not good.
I don't have a very full schedule, so I'm probably available.
I can be probably more available the next week.
Is there a specific day that works better for you?
I apologize.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, look at it later.
I'm actually not available next week, I'm sorry,
Okay.
it's a family vacation plan that week, I apologize. I could try to get somebody else in the office to cover that, if that's the only thing that works. We have someone here waiting in the wings, so.
The 11th or 12th? 11th or 12th, do you wanna?
I'm just trying, we have company, same thing, so,
Well, and we could meet earlier in the day if that works better.
well, I'll just be out of
But
town.
I can make it work on mine, so whatever works for the board.
So we could do towards the end of the week, something, right?
Which would work better for you? It sounds like these guys are
Have flexibility through that week.
Thursday and Friday.
Sure.
Thursday or Friday, which would the 11th or the 12th work better?
either?
So it's on you.
It's on me.
Your date, the
We'll be
11th or
back.
the 12th?
I just want to make sure we're back.
Should we give you an extra day? It's a call.
Let's do
Friday.
Let's do Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just safer.
Is there a time that works better? I know you guys were pretty flexible. How's 10 a.m.? Is that too early?
No, that's fine.
My schedule, but.
So 10 a.m. Friday the 12th?
Okay.
No, I do have a question for the. So if we do have jurisdiction, or we find out you do find documentation in your jurisdiction, is that another opportunity for the assessor to? Can she be included?
Would the assessor, would Parker Appraisal be
Yeah.
allowed to be at that meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be
That would be ideal.
useful. It's not typical to not have a representation from
Right.
the assessing side. So, yeah, that would be a possibility. And then I think the only I would request is that if there is stuff that's found evidence-wise, that if you could send it to me before then, just, and send it
It would be
to
provided.
provided everybody, yeah, that would be good. Yep. So 10 o'clock on the 12th, is that right?
Can I ask one more
Okay.
question before I
Can ask all the questions.
Did the assessors, when it was given to them, the discrepancies,
Mhm.
and I know they reviewed it, they made some changes, but did they make any like monetary changes? Is that something you normally do?
Very insignificant.
Yeah, small.
Okay, so.
But that was prior to tax commitment, so that wouldn't show up on here.
Okay, yeah. I was just curious whether that process was done with them to that point anyways. Okay, thank you.
So they reviewed the things that you've identified.
Right.
And came back with a minimal change.
I mean, they
And
have.
then we looked at the
But-
card again and it wasn't updated. Some of the stuff wasn't updated.
So that would be updated in there.
Is that updated here at the town office versus there? Or who produces this?
Parker appraisal.
Parker appraisal.
Yeah.
Input that.
So this was not updated with the changes that they also reviewed.
That we brought forward,
yes.
That the changes that they agreed to
Yeah.
without updating this.
Well, that's why I'm puzzled why, you know, Parker, whomever, the assessor didn't actually come and schedule an actual site visit so they can see firsthand, rather than sitting here, you know, in an argument situation, so to speak. I mean, it's either there or it's not. But the biggest thing is the fact that the town of West Bath has the entire easement across the waterfront property, no longer makes it a waterfront property.
And that's new information that we
That was
we
new
would
information that wasn't
review
available because
if we have
it was
jurisdiction.
never, the town of West Bath never filed it with the original deed to the property. It was a separate deed altogether that was filed with the second County Registry of Deeds. So I happened to stumble across it, and I was doing some deed research, and that's how I came across it. I also contacted because I wanted to know what the width of the road was, because I know that at one point, town of West Bath only maintained the road to a certain point, and then they took it all the way to the corner. And that's when I started doing some more digging, which has a significant devaluation of the property.
So if I understand the process correctly, that if we have jurisdiction, it's found we have
Yep.
jurisdiction, we would talk about that.
Exactly, yep.
Okay, there's
Motion to
another issue
adjourn?
we should do before we adjourn. Do you feel any need for a site visit?
I'm open to it if that's.
What would we do if we had a site visit? Would we have the owners there as well and have more discussion that way?
Would you be there as
Would
well?
it be more?
Yeah, it would be noticed at the same time as the next meeting, if you wanted to do it that way, that'd be noticed.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
You would
so
notice,
then you
yeah,
have to
no, I
keep-
think that's a good
Right.
point, so if you wanna do it, I think you would, for the July 12th, is it? Notice it for a site visit at whatever time, and then notice it for a meeting if that's what you wanna do. And then the meeting would commence at the site at that time, and then it would be continued to here afterwards if you wanna do those site visits, just to look at the property. It's within your discretion to decide if you wanna do that.
Would it be possible to meet here, determine whether or not they have jurisdiction and then go?
That may be the better way to do it,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
And then
good
announce that
point.
there will be
Yeah.
a site
So the
visit.
question about that, so we
Yeah.
actually are waiting until the 12th to find out whether we have jurisdiction or not.
To make
It's
a
not
final
gonna be just a
decision, yeah,
written-
to make a final decision.
Because you're gonna have to meet regardless
Yeah.
to either determine
Yeah.
whether you don't have jurisdiction or to.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, I think
Okay.
you wanna,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you wanna meet first, decide if you have jurisdiction, if you do, then do the site visit, if you wanna do that, and then come back for the rest of the hearing.
So that's a question to you.
Well, that's a question,
No,
for-
okay.
so would the site
I
visit
will let you
potentially
know.
happen that same day?
Yeah,
Sure.
so we would meet here,
Unless you have,
determine jurisdiction,
they might rent it.
then go to the
They might have
site,
tenants.
and then come back
Right.
to.
Yeah, we do rent it, that's
Yeah,
why
it's
I'm worried
already
about.
occupied, yeah.
So,
Uh,
For me, would Pinterest be acceptable?
Just,
If they wanted to present pictures?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they can submit anything they want in support of the application, if you'd like to
Even though the
submit.
application's already been filed.
Yeah, I think, because until they reach their decision, the record's open, you know, there's no limitation on that. So if they prefer to submit photos instead of a site visit, that would be fine as well, if you wanted to do that. But it's really up to the board to decide, it's your decision as to whether to do a site visit or not, so.
Would you
Drive
think,
if you want.
would you think that bringing pictures would suffice?
Pictures doesn't capture steepness of land. That's a very hard way to.
I think the site visit would be fine if I agree with Brad Renters, I can just tell him.
Okay.
I mean, you can tell from the outside of the building, and the land, pretty, I mean,
Might be best to see it in person.
yeah, exactly. And then
It's
that
not
way-
far from here.
That way you can see the lay of the land.
No, it doesn't.
No.
But yeah, and again, so it's all contingent on the finding of
Okay.
jurisdiction, so if that's what you wanna do, then I think you wanna just,
So we have a little bit of time.
Okay, any further issues?
No, we're done.
Any questions or comments from the public?
I got one other observation. It would have been very helpful from the very beginning, back from the initial visit with Parker Appraisal, that there was an actual sheet defining what you can do for abatement and timeline and schedule, because unless you're digging around, you're not gonna know
Well, we got the formal
it.
process.
But there should have been handed to each individual that,
Oh, yeah, we requested it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that was never done either, so basically, we've been trying to wing it, and here we are.
So motion to adjourn?